So welcome everyone. Welcome to our live talk day 1. What is trauma? Gabi and Sarah here, and we are so glad you are here. And we just want to introduce ourselves a bit so you know some more details about us. So I'm Gabriele Schlumberger. I'm Bachelor's of Science in Early Childhood Education and Healing Touch Certified Practitioner, Be Conscious Creator and Schmico Method Practitioner and Instructor, Life Coach and Natural Health Consultant. I'm always searching for the newest knowledge and energy release practice in order to improve the care I can provide for my clients. Sarah and I both own a private practice specializing in empowering clients dealing with COVID, long COVID vaccine concerns, stress, trauma, depression, and various mental and physical issues, guiding them on a transformative journey to reclaim control over their well-being and life.
Hi, and I'm Sarah Sherbino. I'm a Healing Touch and Schmico Method Practitioner and Life Coach. And, for me, I was lucky enough to have a childhood that was, consisted of a lot of holistic experiences. And I can now offer my clients a truly distinctive, ever-expanding approach to healing and well-being. And Gabby and I are co-owners of Heal, Empower, Love, and I'm the daughter in our awesome mother-daughter team. And we have about 40 years of experience in the energy therapy field. And we are so glad that you're here. Thank you for joining us. And you are in for 5 wonderful days that are filled with a lot of information, tools that will help yourself on your path of healing. And we put a lot of effort into it, and I hope you take a lot from it. It'll be 2 days of mostly concepts and knowledge, and then the last 3 days will be revolving more about tools that you can use to help yourself. And then if you have any questions, just leave them under the video, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. And just as a reminder, we are not trained health professionals, mental health professionals, okay? If you're experiencing trauma or need professional help, please consult with a qualified healthcare provider or mental health professional. We just have to say that. We are looking at it from the energetic aspect and how we can support, therapy, for example, and help clear it from that aspect. And before we jump in, we really just kind of wanted to share a bit about, our own personal stories with trauma. And for me, it happened with the birth of my son. It was very traumatic for myself and for him as well. And afterwards, I fell into a depression and anxiety, which probably lasted about 2 years. I didn't know it. And people really didn't, seem to catch it, or just were like, oh, it's just in your head, or it's just a phase. He's just a newborn. And then it just kind of, got swept under the rug. But then about 2 years after he was born, I started using the tools that you'll be hearing about. And I got myself out of the slump that I was in and didn't even realize I was in. So it's really amazing stuff that you'll be hearing about.
Yeah, and for me, one of my more recent traumas was when we realized that my mom has dementia and she is no longer able to live in her own apartment, and we had to put her in a nursing home and go in and clear out her whole apartment where she lived over 40 years and where I grew up in that apartment. So that was really hard on me emotionally and mentally. And for a long time, I felt also guilty that we just put her in a nursing home, just without her consent, but we had to do something, it was in her best interest, and to overcome all this, using the tools helped me to get much faster over all these traumas who accumulated during that time than it would have been without these tools. So let's start with the fact that all of us have experienced trauma in one form or another, big or small. And when we go and look at the Merriam-Webster definition, it defines trauma as a disordered psychic or behavioral state resulting from severe mental or emotional stress or physical injury, or even just as an emotional upset. So, however, to us, that simply just scratches at the surfaces of what trauma really means and entails. And we will unravel how we view trauma, the ripple effects of trauma, what unresolved trauma can cause, and ultimately what you can do about it. So, to us, trauma is an event or emotion in your life that comes as a very unpleasant surprise, big or small, and on all levels of your being, on your physical, on your mental, on your emotional, and even on your spiritual level. So trauma affects all parts of you. And traumas are the hidden wounds that we carry around each and every day. And no one can see them, They may be wounds that long have scarred over, but they have an impact on how we live our life every single moment of every single day.
All right. And we all know that trauma can result from, either psychologically or physiologically overwhelming event, and it can lead to shock, denial, of course, also changes in, our body, mind, and behavior, and how even our hormones work in our system. And of course, overall, like, healing is possible, but during that process, where you're trying to heal or trying to cope, the trauma can still have lingering effects and still impact your everyday life. And traumatic events, they can have an impact at any age. You don't need to be a certain age in order to experience or have repercussions from trauma. And with post-traumatic stress symptoms like anxiety, flashbacks, disrupted sleep, they're very common, but each person's experience is very unique. And with these hidden wounds, they often then lead us to, repeat certain patterns in our life. So, for example, you may have had or experienced a car accident as a passenger, and you were asleep during that accident. And ever since then, you can't fall asleep on car rides anymore, just because you don't feel safe enough. And so this pattern has been created of, I'm a passenger in the car, I'm not safe enough to fall asleep in the car. And that'll continue happening and repeat itself until the experience of the trauma is cleared. And if not, it could also kind of transpire into more extended aversions to driving, for example. And this really applies to pretty much any trauma, from the car accident to long-term abuse, having you just kind of jump whenever someone yells in your vicinity, to not wanting to swim because you had a near drowning experience, and so on and so forth. And all of us carry these invisible scars. Every single one of us, we all have had experiences, big or small, that were traumatic to us. What's important to keep in mind is that we all see trauma differently. Take 9/11, for example. Some were traumatized because they were physically there. Some were traumatized because they watched TV, but everybody that saw it, it was traumatic to one person. It might have not been traumatic in the same way to the other person, or it might have traumatized them in a completely different way. So every experience is very individualized.
Yeah, and also trauma can be caused by major events such as natural disasters, violence, accidents, or things that didn't happen. So additionally, it may involve responses to persistent traumas like emotional abuse or childhood neglect. So in childhood neglect, you have all the things that led to trauma of something that didn't happen. So such as your mom loving on you. So however, there are daily minor trauma that our bodies and subconscious register and store, but that we may not even recognize as trauma. And it can range from cutting our finger while cooking to a sibling fight evolving into a physical altercation, to us having pre-programmed behaviors to avoid body shaming or bullying. So they are frequently camouflaged as something we feel obligated to do, but have an adverse reaction to in our body. And adverse reactions are most of the time an indicator of an underlying trauma having occurred, or your intuition truly saying stop and rethink. We don't simply develop an adverse reaction to, for example, large groups without some underlying reason, and often trauma in relation to it.
Yeah, that's very true. So last, we just want to say that, in most cases, the traumatic events, they don't last long, right? But the ramifications could literally last you a lifetime. And if you take it as far as looking at PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, it affects about 20% of trauma survivors, and many more suffer subthreshold symptoms. And at 20%, if you think about it, comes only from the percentage of people that are actually being treated, which means there's like way more that are undiagnosed, which makes your life pretty difficult, sadly enough, or it's those people then that don't have necessarily PTSD, but they've just had an accumulation of, let's take one breakup after another, after another, after another. That just is a different kind of trauma, and it's an accumulation, which then affects the way that they live and act and behave in relationships. And overall, that's just something that we would really like to change. It's something that's important to us because there is something that you can do about it. You don't have to continue being trapped, and that's also why we share our personal stories. And just as a recap, we also explained how we view trauma, what can cause and lead to trauma, that trauma can camouflage as something we feel an adverse reaction to situation wise, and that we all experience trauma completely in a different way, right? And if you have any questions, just leave them in the comments below. Let us know your thoughts down below as well. We really like hearing from you. It's something that means a lot to us, and we love interacting with you. So please do. And we're here for you all. And now the next question is, how do we know what trauma response we are in and how previous traumas dictate our lives? And if you want to find out, then join us tomorrow for our live talk at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We are going to continue with the ripple effects of trauma and how it shapes our lives. Thank you for joining us, and see you soon.